Do you know who your biggest enemy really is? It's not the people out there. It's the tiny voice inside your head whispering over and over, "I'm not good enough, I'll fail, I don't deserve it." And every day, millions of people are trapped by this negative self-talk. It silently kills confidence, steals dreams, and turns you into a victim of your own mind. But listen closely, because you can absolutely break free from this toxic cycle. And today I'll show you how. The first and most crucial step in learning how to stop negative self-talk is to recognize the negative inner voice itself. Many people underestimate how much their thoughts shape their reality, not realizing that the words they silently say to themselves have the power to influence their emotions, decisions, and overall well-being. Before you can make meaningful changes, you need to become aware of how often you are engaging in self-criticism, what kind of language you are using internally, and what situations usually trigger these destructive patterns. This process of recognition is about shining a light on the mental chatter that normally goes unnoticed, so that you can begin to separate who you are from what your inner critic is saying. Negative self-talk often presents itself in subtle ways. It might be a quiet whisper in the back of your mind telling you that you're not capable, that you don't measure up, or that you're destined to fail. It can sound like, "I'll never be good enough for this job," "I always screw things up," or "Other people are smarter and more talented than me." These thoughts might appear during stressful moments, such as before a presentation, after receiving feedback, or when comparing yourself to others, but they can also sneak into everyday experiences like trying something new or even making small mistakes. Recognizing them requires you to slow down and pay attention to the exact words and tone of your inner dialogue. One effective way to increase this awareness is to keep a thought journal. Whenever you notice yourself feeling down, anxious, or hesitant, pause and ask, "What did I just tell myself?" Write down the thought exactly as it occurred, without judgment or editing. Over time, patterns will emerge. You might notice that your inner critic has certain favorite phrases or targets specific areas of your life, perhaps your appearance, your abilities at work, or your relationships. This record-keeping turns vague feelings of inadequacy into concrete sentences you can observe, analyze, and eventually challenge. It's important to understand that the negative inner voice is not necessarily the truth. It is often shaped by past experiences, societal expectations, or the influence of critical people in your life. For instance, if you grew up hearing constant criticism from a parent or teacher, your mind may have internalized that voice and replayed it over the years, even when the circumstances no longer apply. Similarly, exposure to unrealistic standards on social media can create a sense that you're never enough, which then fuels a steady stream of internal negativity. Recognizing the voice means learning to distinguish between your authentic self and the internalized messages you've absorbed from the outside world. When you begin to pay attention, you'll see that negative self-talk typically follows a few predictable patterns. There's catastrophizing, where you blow small problems out of proportion, like assuming one mistake at work will lead to being fired. There's labeling, where you reduce yourself to a single negative quality, such as "I'm stupid" or "I'm lazy." There's comparison, where you measure your worth against others and always come up short. And there's perfectionism, where you hold yourself to impossible standards and then berate yourself for not achieving them. Recognizing these categories can help you quickly identify when your mind is slipping into unhelpful territory. The act of recognition itself is powerful because it creates space between you and your thoughts. Instead of automatically believing everything your inner critic says, you start to see those words as just mental events. Imagine sitting on a riverbank watching leaves float by. Each negative thought can be like a leaf drifting past. You don't have to jump into the river and get carried away with it. You can simply notice it, label it as self-criticism or comparison, and let it move on. This perspective gives you freedom to choose how to respond rather than being trapped in the automatic cycle. Mindfulness practices can strengthen this skill of recognition. Simple exercises like focusing on your breath, scanning your body, or practicing meditation allow you to become more attuned to the present moment. When your mind wanders and you notice a thought arise, you gently acknowledge it without judgment and return to your focus. Over time, this training enhances your ability to catch negative self-talk in daily life. Instead of realizing an hour later that you've been spiraling into self-doubt, you'll be able to notice within seconds and redirect your attention. Another helpful technique is to externalize your inner critic. When you hear that negative voice, imagine it as a separate character. Maybe it has a certain tone, accent, or even a silly outfit. Giving it a persona makes it easier to recognize when it shows up and to challenge its authority. Instead of automatically merging with its message, you can say, "Ah, there's my inner critic again, telling me I'll fail." But just because it's talking doesn't mean it's right. This playful separation reduces the critic's power and makes you less likely to take it seriously. It's worth emphasizing that recognition is not about silencing all negative thoughts immediately. That expectation would set you up for frustration. The mind naturally produces a mix of thoughts, some helpful, some unhelpful. The goal is to develop a habit of noticing them clearly and choosing which ones to give weight to. By doing so, you begin to interrupt the automatic cycle where negative self-talk creates negative feelings, which then create more negative self-talk. Recognition is the first break in that loop, a chance to step back and decide whether to continue or to shift direction. To make progress in this area, consistency matters more than intensity. Even just a few minutes a day of paying attention to your inner dialogue can lead to noticeable change over time. You might start by setting reminders on your phone to pause and check in with your thoughts. Or you could build a ritual at the end of the day where you reflect on moments when your inner critic spoke up and what triggered it. Each time you practice, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Recognizing the negative inner voice also opens the door to greater self-compassion. When you see how harshly you've been speaking to yourself, you may feel surprised or even saddened by it. This realization is not meant to make you feel guilty, but to highlight the opportunity for kindness. If you wouldn't talk that way to a close friend or loved one, why accept it from yourself? Awareness naturally plants the seed of change, because once you've seen the voice clearly, it becomes harder to let it dominate unchecked. In the long run, recognition is the foundation on which all other strategies for stopping negative self-talk are built. You cannot replace harmful thoughts with positive affirmations, practice mindfulness effectively, or cultivate gratitude unless you first notice the moment when the inner critic starts to speak. Awareness gives you the power of choice, the choice to believe or not believe, to engage or to disengage, to continue down the old path or to begin carving a new one. By developing this skill, you take the first and most important step toward freeing yourself from the constant barrage of self-criticism and moving closer to a healthier, more supportive inner dialogue. Once you have learned to recognize the negative inner voice, the next step is to actively replace negative thoughts with positive affirmations. Recognition by itself is powerful because it gives you awareness, but awareness without change leaves you vulnerable to falling back into the same destructive cycle. Replacing negative self-talk requires you to challenge the words you say to yourself and intentionally substitute them with statements that build resilience, confidence, and self-compassion. This process doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect or ignoring real challenges. It means choosing to reframe your inner dialogue so that it becomes constructive rather than damaging. Think of your mind as a garden. If left unattended, weeds of self-doubt and criticism will grow quickly, choking out the possibility of healthy growth. Positive affirmations act like planting seeds of encouragement and watering them consistently until they take root. The negative voice might still appear, but it will have less space to dominate. Instead, the affirmations gradually reshape the mental landscape into something more supportive. When you catch yourself saying something harsh like, "I'm such a failure," pause and ask yourself whether this statement is completely true. More often than not, you'll realize it is an exaggeration fueled by emotion rather than fact. At that point, you can introduce a replacement thought. Instead of, "I'm a failure," try, "I didn't succeed this time, but I learned something valuable." This reframing acknowledges the situation honestly while shifting the focus toward growth. Similarly, when your mind says, "I'm not good enough," you can replace it with, "I am improving every day, and my effort matters." The key to effective affirmations is making them both believable and empowering. If your replacement statement feels too unrealistic, your mind will reject it. For example, if you tell yourself, "I am the best at everything I do," but deep down you don't believe it, the affirmation will fall flat. Instead, choose language that aligns with your current stage of growth while pointing you toward progress. Statements like, "I'm capable of learning," "I am worthy of respect," or "I can handle challenges one step at a time," feel authentic, and create a positive shift without requiring perfection. It can help to prepare a set of go-to affirmations in advance. Write down 5 to 10 statements that resonate with you and address the areas where your inner critic is most active. If you often criticize your abilities at work, affirmations like, "I am resourceful and can find solutions," or "My contributions bring value to the team," may be powerful. If your negative self-talk revolves around appearance, you could use statements like, "My body deserves kindness and care," or "I am more than my looks. I carry strength and worth." By having these affirmations ready, you'll be better equipped to replace negative thoughts the moment they arise. Repetition is crucial for affirmations to take effect. Just as negative self-talk becomes powerful through constant repetition, positive affirmations require consistent practice to rewire your thinking. Say them out loud in front of a mirror, write them in your journal, or set reminders on your phone to repeat them throughout the day. The more frequently you use them, the more natural they will become, and eventually they will begin to feel like an automatic part of your inner dialogue. Another useful approach is to phrase affirmations in the present tense. Instead of saying, "I will be confident someday," use, "I am building confidence right now." The present tense reinforces a sense of immediacy and ownership, which makes the affirmation more effective. Even if you are still in the process of growth, framing your affirmations as current realities signals to your mind that change is already underway. It's also important to pair affirmations with action. Words alone can uplift, but when you back them up with consistent behavior, they become far more powerful. If you affirm, "I am capable of learning," make it real by taking small steps to acquire new skills. If you affirm, "I treat myself with kindness," show it by setting boundaries, practicing self-care, or engaging in habits that support your well-being. Affirmations, when supported by aligned action, create a reinforcing loop. Your words inspire action, and your actions reinforce the truth of your words. Sometimes the negative voice may be so strong that affirmations feel forced or hollow at first. This is normal. In those moments, it helps to soften the affirmation by adding words like, "I choose," or "I am learning." For example, instead of jumping straight to "I love myself," you might begin with, "I choose to treat myself with more compassion each day." Or instead of "I am confident," you could say, "I am learning to build confidence." These gentle affirmations create a bridge between where you are and where you want to be, making them easier to accept. Visualization can further enhance the power of affirmations. When you repeat a positive statement, imagine what it looks like, feels like, and sounds like in your life. If you affirm, "I am calm under pressure," picture yourself in a stressful situation, handling it with clarity and composure. By pairing words with vivid mental imagery, you reinforce the message at both the conscious and subconscious level. Over time, this mental rehearsal trains your mind to align with the affirmations, making them more effective in real-life situations. Another strategy is to use the voice of a supportive friend or mentor as inspiration. Ask yourself, if someone who loved me unconditionally were speaking to me right now, what would they say? Then turn that imagined encouragement into an affirmation you can repeat. This helps bypass the harshness of the inner critic and introduces a kinder, more compassionate perspective. Replacing negative thoughts with positive affirmations is not about eliminating all self-doubt forever. Doubts will still surface, especially in challenging circumstances. The difference is that you will have a powerful tool set to counter them. Instead of being swept away by self-criticism, you can respond with affirmations that restore balance and remind you of your worth and potential. Over time, this practice builds mental resilience, making you less vulnerable to negativity and more grounded in self-support. The beauty of affirmations lies in their simplicity and adaptability. They can be tailored to any area of life, career, relationships, health, or personal growth. They can be long and detailed or short and powerful, like "I am enough." They can be written, spoken, or even sung. What matters most is the consistency and the genuine intention behind them. Ultimately, replacing negative thoughts with affirmations transforms your inner dialogue from an enemy into an ally. Instead of being your harshest critic, your mind becomes your strongest supporter. Each time you choose a positive affirmation, you reclaim a bit of your power from the inner critic, And with continued practice, you gradually build an internal environment where encouragement, hope, and possibility thrive far more than criticism and doubt. Once you have learned to recognize the negative inner voice and begun practicing positive affirmations, the next step in silencing destructive self-talk is to develop mindfulness and self-observation. While affirmations give you tools to directly replace unhelpful thoughts, mindfulness provides the deeper skill of awareness, the ability to see your thoughts arise in real time, acknowledge them without judgment, and let them pass instead of allowing them to control your emotions or actions. Mindfulness teaches you that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. That distinction alone can transform the way you relate to the voice inside your head. At its core, mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment. Instead of getting lost in regrets about the past or worries about the future, mindfulness grounds you in the here and now. Negative self-talk thrives on mental time travel. "I always mess things up" looks back at past mistakes, while "I'll never succeed" looks ahead with fear. When you are fully present, these mental projections lose their grip because you are anchored in what is real and happening right now. One of the simplest mindfulness practices is focusing on the breath. The breath is always with you, always occurring in the present, and always available as a point of return. By bringing attention to the sensation of inhaling and exhaling, whether it's the feeling of air at the tip of your nose, the expansion of your chest, or the rise and fall of your abdomen, you train yourself to notice when your mind wanders. Each time you catch yourself lost in thought and gently redirect back to the breath, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Over time, this practice allows you to catch negative self-talk more quickly, interrupting its spiral before it gains momentum. Another powerful practice is journaling with a mindfulness lens. Instead of just writing affirmations or recording daily events, you write down your thoughts as they arise, without censoring them. This stream of consciousness exercise lets you observe your inner dialogue as if you were an impartial witness. When you see your thoughts laid out on paper, you begin to notice patterns, exaggerations, and distortions more clearly. You might realize that your inner critic repeats the same harsh phrases or exaggerates worst-case scenarios. The act of writing makes these thoughts external, and therefore easier to analyze without getting emotionally entangled in them. Mindfulness also encourages you to shift from judgment to curiosity. Instead of immediately labeling a thought as bad and trying to push it away, you can ask yourself, where is this thought coming from? Or what is this thought trying to protect me from? Often, negative self-talk arises as a misguided form of self-protection. For example, your inner critic might say, "Don't even try, you'll fail," as a way of shielding you from the pain of disappointment. By observing it with curiosity rather than hostility, you begin to understand its origins and reduce its emotional charge. In addition to formal practices like meditation or journaling, mindfulness can be woven into daily activities. When you eat, notice the taste, texture, and aroma of your food instead of letting your mind wander into criticism or worry. When you walk, feel the sensation of your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your steps, and the air against your skin. These small acts of presence train your mind to stay grounded, which makes it harder for negative self-talk to hijack your attention. A useful technique for self-observation is called noting. When you notice a negative thought arise, you mentally label it self-criticism, comparison, or fear. By naming it, you create a small distance between yourself and the thought. This prevents you from unconsciously merging with it. For example, instead of sinking into the spiral of "I'm not good enough," you can recognize, "This is just my mind generating a self-critical thought." That slight shift moves you from being inside the thought to being the observer of the thought, which gives you more choice in how to respond. Another self-observation tool is body awareness. Negative self-talk doesn't only appear in the mind, it often has physical signals as well. You might notice tension in your shoulders, a tightness in your chest, or a knot in your stomach when the inner critic is active. By tuning into these bodily cues, you can catch negative self-talk even before it fully forms into words. The body becomes an early warning system, allowing you to pause, breathe, and choose a different response before the spiral deepens. Mindfulness also helps dismantle the illusion of permanence in negative thoughts. When you observe your thoughts carefully, you notice that they come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. No thought lasts forever, and no single thought defines who you are. This realization weakens the authority of the inner critic. Instead of believing its harsh judgments as absolute truth, you see them as temporary mental events that will soon pass. This shift in perspective provides relief and reduces the emotional sting of negative self-talk. One common challenge people face when practicing mindfulness is frustration at how often the mind wanders back into negativity. But it's essential to remember that the act of noticing and returning to the present is the practice itself. Each time you recognize a negative thought and bring your focus back, you are building the skill of awareness. There is no failure in mindfulness, only opportunities to practice. Over time, this repetition rewires the brain, making it easier to remain calm and centered even in the face of stress. Self-observation also involves cultivating a compassionate attitude toward yourself. As you notice the harsh words of your inner critic, try responding with kindness instead of judgment. Imagine speaking to yourself as you would to a close friend who is struggling. If your thought says, "You're so useless," you could gently respond, "I hear that you're feeling inadequate right now, but that doesn't define your worth." This compassionate stance transforms self-observation from a cold analysis into a nurturing dialogue, which gradually weakens the hold of negative self-talk. Over time, practicing mindfulness and self-observation creates a profound shift in identity. Instead of identifying with the critical voice in your head, you begin to see yourself as the calm awareness behind the voice. You realize that your worth is not determined by passing thoughts or fleeting emotions. You are the observer who can choose how to respond. This realization brings a sense of freedom and empowerment, because you no longer feel trapped by the negativity that once seemed inescapable. Ultimately, mindfulness and self-observation give you the tools to break the automatic link between thought and reaction. Negative self-talk loses its power when you can notice it without being swept away. In that moment of observation, you create space, a space where you can choose to replace the thought with an affirmation, shift your focus to gratitude, or simply let the thought dissolve. That space is where transformation happens, and it is cultivated through the steady practice of mindfulness. Once you have cultivated recognition, affirmations, and mindfulness, the next major step to stop negative self-talk is to change your environment and the sources of influence that surround you. People often think of self-talk as something that happens purely inside the mind, but in truth, the words and beliefs we repeat to ourselves are shaped by what we see, hear, and experience externally. The environment you live in, whether it's your physical space, the people you interact with, or the content you consume, acts like fertile soil that either nourishes positivity or feeds negativity. By intentionally curating your environment, you make it easier to maintain supportive self-talk and harder for the inner critic to thrive. Consider first the influence of people. Human beings are highly social, and our self-perception is shaped by the feedback we receive from others. If you spend time around individuals who constantly criticize, complain, or compare, it's only natural that their voices will echo in your own mind. Someone who frequently points out your flaws may slowly become the model for your inner critic. On the other hand, supportive people who encourage, uplift, and believe in your potential can help you internalize a kinder inner voice. This is why choosing your company is so important. Surrounding yourself with positive, respectful people does not mean avoiding all criticism, but it does mean prioritizing relationships where feedback comes with empathy and respect rather than harsh judgment. Changing your environment also means setting boundaries with those who drain your energy or reinforce negative patterns. You don't necessarily need to cut people out completely, but you can limit the amount of time and emotional space you give them. For example, if a coworker constantly gossips and complains, you can redirect the conversation or excuse yourself politely. If a family member consistently criticizes, you can learn to acknowledge their words without absorbing them as truth. Boundaries protect your mental space, ensuring that you don't unintentionally carry external negativity into your self-talk. In addition to people, the media and content you consume play a significant role in shaping your inner dialogue. Social media, in particular, can amplify feelings of inadequacy through constant comparison. When you scroll through curated images of others' successes, achievements, or appearances, it's easy to internalize the belief that you're falling behind or not good enough. This comparison-driven culture feeds directly into negative self-talk. One solution is to curate your online environment intentionally. Unfollow accounts that trigger self-criticism and replace them with pages that inspire, educate, or encourage positivity. Instead of filling your mind with unrealistic standards, expose yourself to content that celebrates authenticity, resilience, and growth. Beyond digital content, consider the broader influences in your daily life: books, music, films, or even the conversations you engage in. Do these influences leave you feeling uplifted and empowered, or do they reinforce cynicism and self-doubt? Just as diet affects physical health, mental diet affects emotional health. Feeding your mind with positive, constructive influences creates a reservoir of uplifting ideas that you can draw upon when the inner critic shows up. Your physical environment also has an impact on self-talk. A cluttered, chaotic space can contribute to feelings of overwhelm and self-criticism, while a clean, organized, and inspiring environment can support a calmer, more positive mindset. Simple changes like decluttering your desk, adding natural light, or surrounding yourself with affirming reminders, such as inspirational quotes or vision boards, can make a surprising difference. When your environment reflects order and encouragement, it becomes easier to maintain an internal dialogue that matches that energy. Another overlooked aspect of environment is your routine. Habits create the atmosphere in which your thoughts thrive. For example, if you start your day by checking your phone and comparing yourself to others, you set the stage for negative self-talk. But if you begin with a morning ritual of affirmations, journaling, or gratitude, you set a more positive tone. By designing routines that nurture self-support, you reduce the opportunities for negativity to take root. Changing your environment also involves becoming mindful of the language used in your surroundings. If you are constantly exposed to sarcastic or self-deprecating humor, you may find yourself unconsciously adopting that tone toward yourself. Similarly, if your workplace culture emphasizes perfectionism and criticism over growth and learning, it may reinforce harsh self-talk. While you may not always have control over these environments, you can consciously choose how much weight to give them and whether to counterbalance them with positive input elsewhere. Practical way to shift your environment is to actively seek out communities that align with your growth. Joining groups, workshops, or online forums where people share positivity, encouragement, and constructive advice can help you internalize those same values. When you hear others speaking kindly about themselves and cheering for one another, it normalizes the idea that self-support is not arrogance, but a healthy way of being. These communities can act as a counterweight to environments that foster negativity. It's worth noting that changing your environment doesn't mean trying to live in a bubble of positivity and ignoring reality. Life will always include challenges, criticism, and difficult people. The goal is not to avoid them entirely, but to balance them with enough positive influence that your self-talk remains steady and resilient. Think of it like adjusting the volume. You want to turn down the voices that feed negativity and turn up the voices that encourage growth. Over time, as your environment shifts, you'll notice that your inner critic becomes quieter because it has less fuel to draw from. Instead of repeating external criticisms or comparisons, your mind will begin to echo the supportive influences you've chosen to surround yourself with. This makes it easier to sustain the practices of recognition, affirmation, and mindfulness, because your external world is working with you rather than against you. In short, your environment matters more than you might think. People, media, spaces, routines, and language all play a role in shaping your internal dialogue. By curating these influences with intention, you create conditions where positive self-talk can flourish and negative self-talk loses its power. This step is about making sure that the world around you supports the changes you are trying to make within yourself. When the external and internal environments align, transformation becomes not just possible, but natural. The final step in learning how to stop negative self-talk is to cultivate gratitude and self-compassion. If recognition helps you see the problem, affirmations teach you to reframe it. Mindfulness gives you awareness, and environment supports your growth. Then gratitude and self-compassion are the practices that soften your inner world and transform your relationship with yourself at the deepest level. They don't just silence the inner critic temporarily. They replace it with a kinder, more nurturing voice that sustains long-term resilience and emotional well-being. Gratitude, at its core, is the practice of focusing on what is good rather than what is lacking. Negative self-talk thrives on absence and deficiency. I don't have enough. I'm not good enough, or I haven't achieved enough. Gratitude interrupts this cycle by shifting your attention to abundance. Instead of dwelling on shortcomings, you direct your mental spotlight toward what you already have: skills, experiences, relationships, opportunities, or even simple joys like a warm meal or a sunrise. This shift doesn't erase challenges, but it balances them with perspective, reminding you that your life is not defined by flaws alone. A practical way to cultivate gratitude is through a daily journaling exercise. Each morning or evening, write down 3 things you are grateful for. They don't need to be grand or dramatic. In fact, the smaller and more specific, the better. I'm grateful for the way my friend texted to check on me. I'm grateful for my ability to keep learning. Or, I'm grateful for the calm feeling during my walk today. Over time, this practice rewires your brain to notice and appreciate positive details. Neuroscience shows that gratitude activates brain regions linked to dopamine and serotonin, the very chemicals that promote well-being. By consistently practicing gratitude, you weaken the grip of negative self-talk because your mind learns to look for reasons to appreciate rather than criticize. In addition to journaling, gratitude can be expressed directly. Telling people in your life that you appreciate them not only strengthens relationships, but also reinforces your own positive mindset. When you express thanks, you are practicing acknowledgement rather than criticism, a habit that eventually carries over to how you treat yourself. Gratitude thus becomes both external and internal. You learn to appreciate others, and you also learn to appreciate yourself. While gratitude shifts your focus outward, self-compassion turns it inward. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness, patience, and care you would extend to someone you love. When your inner critic says, "You failed again," self-compassion replies, "Yes, you made a mistake, but mistakes are part of learning, and you still deserve kindness." This practice doesn't excuse harmful behavior. Instead, it creates a safe internal space where growth can happen without the constant fear of judgment. Many people resist self-compassion because they believe it will make them weak or complacent. They think that being hard on themselves is necessary for motivation, but research shows the opposite. Self-compassionate people are more resilient, less afraid of failure, and more willing to try again after setbacks. Harsh self-talk may push you temporarily, but it drains energy and confidence over time. Self-compassion, on the other hand, fuels sustainable motivation because it allows you to fall, recover, and keep moving forward without shame holding you back. One way to practice self-compassion is to imagine how you would comfort a close friend in the same situation. If your friend said, "I messed up at work, I'm such a failure," you would never respond with, "Yes, you are terrible, you'll never succeed." Instead, you would probably say, "Everyone makes mistakes. You tried your best and you'll learn from this." By imagining that scenario, you can redirect that compassion back to yourself. Over time, this practice retrains your internal dialogue to become more gentle and supportive. Another self-compassion exercise is to use soothing self-talk in the moment of stress. When you feel the inner critic rising, place your hand on your chest, take a deep breath, and say something like, "This is a difficult moment, but I'm doing my best." This physical and verbal reassurance activates the body's calming response, reducing stress while reinforcing kindness. Small acts like this may seem simple, but they counteract years of habitual self-criticism and help establish a new baseline of self-support. Gratitude and self-compassion are also deeply connected. Gratitude makes you notice the good in your life, and self-compassion ensures you include yourself in that circle of appreciation. Together they create a balanced mindset where you see both external blessings and internal worth. For example, instead of saying, "I'm grateful for my supportive friends because I don't deserve them," self-compassion reframes it as, "I'm grateful for my supportive friends, and I'm learning to see that I also bring value to these relationships." In this way, gratitude prevents you from overlooking positives, and self-compassion prevents you from excluding yourself from those positives. It's important to remember that cultivating gratitude and self-compassion is not a one-time fix, but an ongoing practice. The inner critic may still show up, especially during stressful times, but gratitude and compassion serve as steady counterweights. Each time you thank yourself for your effort instead of punishing yourself for imperfection, you weaken the critic's influence. Each time you choose to notice what's good instead of what's lacking, you strengthen your inner voice of encouragement. Over time, gratitude and self-compassion create a new foundation for your self-talk. Instead of being a hostile environment where negativity grows unchecked, your inner world becomes a place of appreciation and kindness. You learn to recognize progress rather than only failures, to celebrate small victories instead of dismissing them, and to treat yourself as a person worthy of respect rather than constant criticism. This shift doesn't just change your inner dialogue, it changes your entire relationship with yourself. Ultimately, gratitude and self-compassion close the loop of transformation. They remind you that self-talk is not only about controlling negativity, but also about nurturing positivity. By choosing to be grateful for what you have and compassionate with who you are, you create an internal voice that is not just less negative, but actively supportive, encouraging, and sustaining. And when that becomes your default, negative self-talk no longer stands a chance. Now that you know how to stop negative self-talk, start practicing it today. And I want to hear from you. Which part of this video resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts, your feelings, or even your own experience of overcoming negative self-talk in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like, leave a review, and let's build a community where we speak to ourselves with power and belief, not with doubt.